No, you have two microphones, so we have to deal with it. But I can give this one. I just do a quick intro and then we'll get started. So it's two. So let's just get started. Again, everybody on time. Thank you, Paris. I haven't seen this with French people before. Apologize, but it's really nice to see. We're going to talk about opening new markets, how to nail your go-to-market strategy. It's going to be moderated by Anna. And we're sitting perfectly with the pictures. Nice, thank you. She's a freelancer at TechCrunch, so she knows how to ask the questions, so she's going to do that. Then we have Lucille Andersson. She works at Teamtailor, expanded to all continents, so she can definitely talk about this. Then we have Melina. She works at blisce, supports portfolio companies on how to expand, so she does have looked into multiple kitchens, as we say it. And then we have Tim. I worked at Dropbox before, and I think he serves with crocodiles because he's from Australia, but we're going to learn if that's actually true or not. There we go. Have fun.
Yeah, thanks for being with us just after lunch. I want this session to be really actionable. I think that's the purpose of this conference anyway. Of course, there are a lot of situations and variation on how to expand, so I really want us to share as many anecdotes and angles and lessons as possible. And to dive right in, actually, Melina, I think from your job, you actually do due diligence on a lot of companies. You see a lot of variation. What's the main question you ask yourself when you look at a company on the expansion angle?
I think one thing that's often underestimated is the why you go international, and what is the internationalization value proposition for the business, and has it been compared to other growth levels of the business, because internationalization introduces a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, and so from an investor POV, that's, I think, where we start first. And then, depending on the stage of planning, etc., we look at, okay, how has it been budgeted? How will you spend your budget? In what sequence? And what's the team capabilities? What's, the market complexity? What's your ability to win in that market? And so on and so forth. But I think we start with the why.
Mm-hmm. Just a quick follow-on on that. So if the answer is no, like we're not expanding right now, you might still be willing to invest?
Yes, because as part of our value proposition as a fund, so blisce is basically, we lead early growth, Series A, B, financing rounds, and we're based and operate in the United States and Europe. And as part of that, a lot of the companies we invest in think about internationalization, but that may not be a part of the deal that we underwrite. Maybe they are, they have thought about it, but it's not going to be part of that investment round. And so we run a lighter due diligence, which is aimed more at preparing our post-investment support. But if I'm underwriting an expansion to the US market, I will I will obviously scrutinize much more the product market fit, team composition elements, capital allocation, all that.
So the mic situation is going to be awkward. Don't hesitate to steal it from me if you want to chime in. But Tim, actually I have a question for you, because I think your product is self-service. So
yeah,
it kind of happened to you, right? Expansion?
Yeah, not every product's going to be right to be global day one. Like, people say that really easily, and it's not that easy as you've said. So I try and think about matching. Going global's got to match the DNA of your product. So you got to think about the product and the market that you're in, or how your product's used. But I think about going into more markets increases complexity, but it's not like a 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 with markets. It's like a times a function of, so it gets much more complex very, very quickly. And I think people underestimate how much internationalization needs to be done going into new markets. We are a self-service product, and we're in 43 different countries at the moment. The only thing that really, the two things that limit our product are English language, so we don't want to go into different languages, and that's by our own choice. And then we just have to worry about currency. There's a few other nuances of that when we get into bigger companies around having PII data, but we do that by focusing, we go narrow again on markets. So like East Coast of the US is our focus for larger companies. So we still think about that, but in a slightly different way. If you are a PLG company, that can play to your advantage and your disadvantage as you go into bigger customers. And if you're not a PLG product, it might not be right to do so. So everyone's like, just be PLG. It's like not necessarily right for everyone. So you got to think about the DNA of what you do and who you do it for before working out what go-to-market's right for you.
But just in case someone doesn't know, PLG is product-led growth and self-service product like yours.
Yeah. So yeah. There's another thing that I see founders do very effectively, or if they don't do, can screw up really badly. I'm sorry, I've got Australian sayings. So if I say something and people don't recognise it, feel free to chime in and I'll explain what that means. But going into new markets, and people do this that I've seen launch into a new market and they go all in on a new market without testing the market. I've seen very, very effective is find a good investor or someone in a new market and go visit them for 1 month. Get as many customers as you can. Try and sell them your product. If you can get them to use it, use it. You'll find out very quickly that it might find a good partner or someone really good there, but also might be way harder than you expected. And I've seen a lot of people save a lot of money, a lot of distraction, a lot of time by testing a new market before you commit to entering it.
Lucille, I see you agreeing. Can you tell us?
I didn't even count. I should have counted maybe before, but so Teamtailor is a SaaS software. We sell a recruitment and employer branding platform. And when I started, we were just in the Nordics. It's a Swedish company, and I was chosen to launch France. And then this year, as France is a success, we have decided to replicate everything we have been doing so far in the other markets that we have found. But historically, it was literally, and you're going to slap me, it was literally, okay, I want to move to Quebec. Can I go and open Canada? So yeah, we've been learning from our mistakes, literally. I mean, sometimes it's a good story, and to be honest, I think that's the beauty of Teamtailor is how much we empower our employees who are part of this journey with us to grow and to be part of this market expansion. But I think like if I summarize the things that we keep today is first of all like to try to gather the energy, not spread as much as we used to. For example, not later than yesterday, I rejected someone who wanted to do that, like open a new market, and I said, you know what, I think we have enough to handle with North America and Asia that we really want to crack. So let's pause for now. And what we usually do is that we hire salespeople locally. So we do localize a lot, and we make sure that our ATS is translated, our support article are translated, so we talk the same language as the end users, and we have salespeople to launch it. So we have 400-ish employees, and more than half of the employees are salespeople. I think that explains a lot from what I'm going to tell you more. But so we want people who are driven, who are not afraid to do this extra mile, to do a little bit of partnership. And when we enter, we actually look into, okay, who are the key players on this market who could complement us and make sure that we work together and we do business together. So we use their network visibility to embark them on our journey and just go for it. And then, of course, we add on more, but I will stop there.
To reply a little bit to what you said in terms of the early scrappiness of launching a market, I mean, we've definitely had companies who proceeded like that, but I think there's always worlds of efforts that you need to deploy between a company who can launch certain things remotely versus having to deploy operations and a full team and hire a go-to-market or a launch team locally. And so we've had companies that basically, not against our advice because we supported them to go to another market, but we were more like, hey, is this going to introduce business distraction from the core markets? Should you not rather consolidate your home market before, launching abroad? But actually, we've seen then side benefits such as if you go to a more demanding market where you need to improve certain customer support features, that actually has a very nice flywheel effect on your home market. And the more, you said it a little bit in the beginning, the more you expand, the more your core markets tend to improve as well, because you may have an a more interesting set of competitors that inspire you by the way that they sell to their customers. And so that's going to improve. And then the second, I think, side benefit was also that it motivates the teams. And sometimes, I mean, there's a good balance to find is that it can create a lot of, traction within the whole business, and everyone's just kind of in this growth spirit, but it also can distract founders or CEOs, and that's where an investor can get anxious.
Right. Tim, in your case, was it a distraction decision not to do other currencies, localization and stuff, or your budget?
Yes and no. I think we think about timing related, like when are we going to place the bet on that? And there's 2 or 3 things we've said we won't do right now, which impact our ability to focus on a market. But nurturing relationships in that market might make sense. I'll think back to my early experience in the US with Dropbox, and they'd just gone into Japan, but they didn't choose to go into Japan. Japan chose them. So I'm really interested actually to hear about your experiences where a market's, it's not someone like, oh, I really love Canada, I would like to visit there. Which seems like a good idea if you've got someone super motivated and there's opportunity in that market. But markets are a lot easier to be pulled into than like we're going to force our way in there. And you've got to be able to do both. But I think finding for your first couple of markets, if you can find a market where you've nurtured and find that you've got pull in from a customer or a partner or one particular part of the market, I think can be a really interesting way to tease out your first market or two. It's a lot easier going in when you're wanted somewhere than not.
Yeah, Lucille, another thing you were saying is one of the questions once you've entered market is how to allocate budgets between them, like how fast to go in each. How would you make that decision?
We actually just redid everything. We will roll it out soon, the go-to-market framework, because we used to be like, okay, you guys want to do this. We kind of trusted the local teams to decide where we should be, how much we should like be represented. And the thing is, like, France has been quite of a pillar of everything we started. So we have a brand ambassador, we have a podcast, things that we didn't even have in the Nordics, which were the nest of Teamtailor. So when we saw that it was succeeding and we kind of spread the ways of working, we felt like, okay, maybe that's in some markets something that could make sense. So now what we will have, instead of having new emerging and mature markets, we will have potential markets. And it's actually super difficult to define what is a potential market and to be like politically correct also, because the teams are fighting and they want to succeed, and some of them have very good results. But at the end of the day, like, you can't put the same budget for the Baltics as for North America, for example. And the board is asking for results, and they are definitely more interesting by North America than the Baltics. So what we do is that with this potential bulk like groups that we created, they get some kind of support. So partnership and marketing are the biggest support for sales. So at some point they get budget, at another point they get a dedicated person to take care of partnership and marketing. And then, you know, it goes on like this, with different type of events and so on, of course.
So you mentioned boards. I wanted the investor perspective on that. How would you tell a company that, the US might be more important than a smaller market? How do you help them prioritize?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what's the market significance for your business. And so that can depend on just, you know, pure factual sort of share of TAM based criteria, or on the strategic significance. What is also your, for example, your key customer requests? If they're international, what do they, you know, basically want for you to expand to? And just how are investors then viewing, you know, the importance of the market? So it's kind of a mix, and what's obviously the complexity and your ability to win in that market. But yeah, we sort of like to see, you know, how basically your unit economics will evolve in that market when you launch it. Obviously, we like to see early traction in one market before expanding to the rest. Obviously, we'll be, you know, more focused on sort of your internationalization value proposition as it relates to your equity story. We want to see a sort of planning with burn rates, or the pace of a burn rate, and make sure that you have enough run rate and that you have basically defined the milestones or your success KPIs in that market. So, for example, your CAC is one metric that we closely look at. Obviously, revenue growth compared to other markets. Is that more quickly achieved in a new market that you enter? Are you able to roll out your playbook more effectively? These are the things that and then I think we can talk about it in more depth, but team composition is also a great, and like you spoke about the functions, right, that you prioritize per markets, what resources you deploy. I think that's a big question mark for founders that we accompany in this process, yeah.
Yeah, Tim, do you have thought on team compositions on the ground?
Probably not. As much as the other team. Was involved in helping Dropbox launch their Australian office, so I talked to the 2 team members that led that. They wanted people that really wanted to be, like, you want people that really want to go, you know, like push people out. So I think outside of the budget function, the right number of people, typically, particularly if they're in a really wildly different time zone or a wildly different language, they're going to feel left out there by themselves. So having enough critical mass to survive alone, but enough creativity to like wrangle whatever they need in that market, I think is really important. And they thought a lot about that when they were launching the Australian market, which was their first big market outside of Japan. I do, for everyone can I ask a question of the audience? For people in the audience, who's thinking about going into another market and you've come along, or just launching into a new market at the moment? Oh, hello. Cool. Who's in more than one market, more than one country with your product business coming? Okay. There's one little hack I thought about when we did that originally, and I got asked by an investor, and like, oh, we're going to sell into other markets. They're like, how are you going to do that? You're going to need multiple currencies. You're going to need all these things. If you're an early stage company and you're a particularly product-led growth, I found the best hack, and I know that sometimes you want to be in your local, wherever your local place is in currency or in language, particularly if you've got a network there. I found just pretend to be slightly American. So sell in American dollars, write it in American English. Remember, I'm from Australia, so we spell different to them. They've got it wrong. We spell correctly. And I found for most countries in the world, when push comes to shove, if they can't get the product locally easily, there's not a lot of competitors. I was like, oh yeah, US dollars, whatever. Whereas you put in Australia dollars, they're like, what is this AU thing on the end of the domain? Like, is that Austria? Like, no one, like, they get confused. So taking away all of those friction points and, you know, via trial and error, like having a .com domain and using US pricing somewhere in the mix is a great way to kind of go larger than just a single geography without that friction.
Staying with you one more second, because you actually said that a mistake companies may make is think of the US as one block, and that's not how you approach it. So can you talk a bit more about that and in the MVs?
Yeah, I mean, it's 52 different countries. I know we've got some US folks in the audience, so I've got to be very careful what I do and don't say. But as an Australian going there, it's all super different. It's a very, very big market. And culturally, even though you would know this, I feel like in Europe, you just kind of innately are aware of this, that even though you're very close by, you have different ways of thinking about things and different cultural norms. And a lot of Australian companies, and maybe the experience is similar with European companies heading to the US or heading to Asia, you miss some of those nuanced norms. And so they're going in and they're just kind of not getting traction or selling the wrong way or thinking, man, everyone just wants to talk to me. And they're like, they're not interested in your product at all. So you've got to kind of like be able to swap from persona to persona when you're working in different countries or pitching to different investors in the US. Like, I've got American Tim and I have Australian Tim and I'm still working on my European Tim. So just because they're different, if you roll up a certain way, they're like, oh, Tim's just this relaxed, surfy guy that doesn't really care, because they've got these kind of mental positions on stuff. And you, as a founder or as a team member launching a new geography, those nuances sometimes are things that really matter when you're trying to get a job done in a new market.
Yeah, have you experienced that as well?
I was just thinking maybe because we talked a lot about results and how to decide and so on, but maybe the biggest challenge is to make sure we expand our culture with us in those countries, because as you say, there's such a time difference. Like my Australian, my country manager, Oceania, I mean, I'm happy it's flexible because otherwise we have no hour in common. It's crazy. And I can really feel how far away they feel from us, from the HQ, and you know, like the time that they have done their day, we will wake up and answer them. So they need to wait 24 hours to kind of move on, negotiate. It's not the best in the long run, I would say. But yeah, like how we work on the culture. And something I realized actually with North America is when we launch a market and look at the salaries and so on, we have quite low base, and we really are looking for hunters. But when we are looking at a new market, we look always at the market salaries. You know, we do a lot of studies on that. And I think one big mistake we did, for example, in North America, is that we gave them quite a nice base. So those guys, when they don't sign and they don't get commission, they don't really care because they have the base to live well. And what I start to realize also is that we push on the fact that, okay, we don't have the best employee contracts yet because, you know, we take it step by step. We know how much it can cost. But we have, I think, like 25 vacation days or something, which is really good for the US, as I understand. So we're super happy. We're like the Swedes, like, hey, this is so good. You have good vacation days. They're like, I don't care. I'm not used to take vacation days. And then we realize how much, like, okay, maybe we should actually listen to them and understand what are their triggers and how managing them, how connecting with them is actually super different from Europe, for example.
Melina, how do you guide the company through that process?
I think, I mean, the biggest pain points, and especially when it comes to the US, is to hire sort of the VP sales. And then, yeah, compensation package is often very tricky to figure out. The incentive model that you spoke to is critical. Equity compensation is much more widespread, and you know, I think a VP sales tenure on average might be around 18 months. People move, and it's often, you know, based on the compensation package. And so if they don't ask to have equity compensation, even if it's a 4-year vesting period, that means that, you know, they're likely less committed to staying for the longer run. So I think that's something also to watch out for. So there's a lot of questions usually on the hiring process, which needs to be completely rethought. And then, yeah, the way you sell into, you know, American corporates is also very different. And I think what you said about, you know, the state differences, I think we call it internationalization when we have a company move from, you know, within Europe or expanding from Europe to the States. Within the States, we call it market expansion because we still, like a company, you know, going from New York to California or to Texas, the markets are, you know, the regulation changes quite dramatically, and people's mindset too. And then the US is very sort of community-driven, much more niche-y in the way that you sell things and solutions. So I think, yeah, that's a big... and then, should the founder move or not? Who is sort of your market launch leader? Is it, you know, somebody who is kind of a Swiss Army knife for the first 6 months, and then you hire a team and you hire a senior who's, you know, who you can afford and who has network, who brings in, you know, maybe customers. If you do that in the beginning, not a lot of companies do it right at the start, I find, yeah.
I think it's just speaking to the US market, I've got a friend of mine who founded a company in New Zealand called Xero. It's like a finance software. I don't know if you have here in Europe, but they do accounting, like book work. And they way underestimated going into the US because every single state, depending on what your software product company does, every single state in the US has its own employment laws, tax laws. They have tax laws, and you might have that here down to the county if you're selling a certain type of product. So you've got not 52 different tax jurisdictions. There's thousands of tax jurisdictions you have to worry about in the US. It is honestly ridiculous, so complex. So I do everything I can to navigate having that be my problem. But that's And people love suing each other to sort stuff out in the US. That is just a reality of that. So it's a very, in that way, a different culture. So if you're a product company thinking about not just a market-based approach, you may have a product that requires quite a lot of work to get it ready for that market. I mean, really honest about how much work is required. For Xero, it cost them the market not having that right when they went in. They went touch too early. They way underestimated the complexity. In talking to the team, they wish they had just given it 12 months, gone the same level of effort, but just getting the product ready for the market or doing it in the quiet. Whereas they went really, really big and then ended up with all these bad customer stories with it didn't meet the needs of that market. So it is definitely is a consideration to get the product right alongside the go-to-market.
No, I was just thinking like, actually I spent the whole year now trying to figure out what should be the sales strategy, as you say, like for US, because one mistake we did is that the head of sales North America was a Swede, then it was a French guy, then we were like, okay, maybe we should have some American guy who has done that. So now we came to that point, and then as we were thinking North America, so mixed US and Canada. Then when what I try to do, because I'm bringing the go-to-market of how we've been successful, but I don't have the North America culture or knowledge. So I'm trying to surround ourselves with people who have worked on this market, and American people, really. And I really understand the difference now between US and Canada. And when, as you say, like the US is definitely a headache today. And I'm curious to know, like, what is, like, maybe, I don't know, there's no magic recipe, but the ideal sales strategy that you have tried out, because today I don't know if we should be focusing on industries or if we should focus on like geography zones, you know. There's so many ideas coming to my mind, and yeah.
I'm Australian. I do not know the answer, but I can tell you what I said. I remember I was with the early Dropbox team in 2012, and there's maybe 180 people, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to go." I was on their channel side, so we did a channel program for Dropbox for Business. They're like, "Oh, we're looking for someone to help with this particular thing. We'll launch a channel." We've met these people, and they have like a channel in a box, and they have this certain way of doing it. I've never ever met a company that you can leverage stuff other people have done. I think that's the smartest thing to do, is like go to a conference in your industry. I do this with my competitors. I want to watch them pitch. I want to see how they're doing it. I want to see, like, is that hard? Like, do you find it hard? And you'll find things that you'll learn through another person's motion into market. I think for Dropbox, they're completely unique DNA, completely unique product at the time, and the way we did channel was completely unique. And so I think it really is about, and the hard thing, because you have all this experience in another market, is to try and work out, how do I shortcut learning about all the nuances of the market? You could find someone that's from the US that has experience there, that like works in a US company in business development, and just sit, drink coffee, champagne, get drunk, and try and work out all the secrets of the US market. And I find that's my strategy in most markets, is to go and find someone, get drunk, dance, and be like, and how does it really work? Like, tell me the real truth. Because there's all these truths that people are polite to you about when you're in a motion of selling. If you can find out those real truths, you'll be able to attack a market way faster.
I mean, going back to team composition, I think you touched upon something quite critical, sort of the culture link as well. So I think we've seen companies, operate from HQ and then have sort of a US only or German only or whatever you want to call it team with no sort of corporate oversight. And I think that's where sort of cultural challenges happen a lot. And typically, US culture, it's maybe a little bit harder to get at candid feedback or some of the negative stuff, because people are maybe more, fear being fired more quickly, etc. So there's maybe less complaints that are shared openly. Versus the French market, where you have a lot of like securing labor laws and where people openly speak up in a meeting and tell you that this is BS, So I think having a person that can make the link between the two is super critical to ensure that you're getting the market feedback back to HQ. Yeah.
But Tim, going back to you, because I thought when we were preparing, that was super interesting when you mentioned the interest of shadowing a partner, a local partner. So can you give a bit more details on that?
Yeah, I mean, it involves drinking, dinner, whatever they enjoy doing. You want to get to know them and have them feel comfortable to tell you the truth about their market. And I'm sure we've all done that. I mean, you don't have to own that you drink champagne with anyone, but that I find getting to know people and who they are in a market is absolutely brilliant. If you're thinking about going to another market, I don't know. My reflection is like I've been in between Australia and America for the last 10 odd years, but in Australia, lots of companies are like, oh, we want to like launch in the UK or we want to launch in Europe. And there's a few different trade missions where the government will have someone that knows people in America or in the UK or in Europe, and they'll go and spend 2 weeks, visit everyone, meet lawyers, accountants, have all the questions asked and learn about labour. And they're like, oh my goodness, there's this labour law there. Like, we can't just go and hire someone. We've got to like create a whole company, and that's like all this cost and all this money, and we can't then back out of the problem. If we do, then we have to pay them out like years and years of salary, because we have, Australian-ish labour law, it's unique, really. We think it's not, but it is. And so I think going and spending 2 weeks, don't shortcut it, don't stay in a hotel every night, go and find people that you know, hang out with them, work out of their office, and ask as many open and honest questions as you can is the fastest way to close that knowledge gap. Without it, you will make an assumption and ultimately end up making an ass out of yourself at some point. So just I always assume I am missing all this information, and I find getting someone to tell me the truth is the best. Even with investors. So I was in the US one time. This is a classic example. I pitched this investor in San Francisco. We're walking down the street, and one of the founders in their fund is like walking along and is like, we won't probably invest in Australian because you guys aren't that serious. I'm like, what? She's like, oh yeah, it's a lifestyle business, I'm like, I was so offended, but she was saying the truth. Like, that's how the people in the room saw me. So I had to now I knew that I could kind of roll in and communicate differently to that, and that applies when you're selling to people, when you're hiring people. So trying to work out how to get someone in a new market to tell you the truth is probably I think is going to be the challenge for most people in a new market.
And Melina, Tim earlier was mentioning competitors and observing them, but I was curious to know, when you do due diligence on a company, how important is it to see, okay, you want to enter this market, but you have that giant competitor there?
You mean how we analyze that?
Yeah.
Or how we...
Yeah, well, matter?
It does matter. I mean, we want to just... I mean, for us, we want to basically understand your expansion plans and what you factored into the decision-making. Because that's eventually what we can support on as well, is like the whole sort of strategy materials that you develop around your, eventually your go-to-market plan. And so we want to know, do you understand? Have you benchmarked? Have you looked at competitors? Obviously, when they have prioritized already a certain market, we look at that as well, and we study it, and we look at the value propositions and how, the pricing, all that, and how they stack up. But that's very, I think the competitive landscape is super critical, and being aware of that, is a major sort of decision factor.
Lucille, do you want to react to that before we open it for questions? Or?
For sure, because you mentioned something about the customers, like they usually are customers in one country and are located in several, but it's exactly the same with competitors and partners. So the thing is, we don't necessarily need to start from scratch when we launch a market, because we already have this community, these relationships that we could just expand, actually. So it's actually fun. And for example, tonight I'm going to mingle, have some champagne at our best partner in France. And those guys, they're expanding in Benelux and Spain. And I have helped them to go there because we are much more advanced. And it's really great to see them also like connecting, the sales team working together to really grow at the same path, learning from each other and using each other's networks to get to the point, basically.
That's also something we do look at. If there's, what are the partnerships, what's the existing networks and markets, and then as an investor, if it's a market where we have an interest in terms of we scout the market, we want to invest, obviously we help with that. But I think, in terms of accelerating and introducing efficiencies into your go-to-market, partners are super critical and interesting to look at,
Great. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has any. Yeah.
Hi. You mentioned earlier, I don't remember who exactly, about Dropbox and that China, Japan, they chose you.
Yeah.
What
personally,
the company. What elements make
Yeah,
you
so
understand that?
And I think other people said it as well, looking for, in your sales inquiries, are they all coming from one market or are they coming from different markets? So, and Japan, for whatever reason, Dropbox became very, very popular organically and had a lot of virality in Japan. So they didn't, when they were looking at where do we open our first international office, there's like a whole business already there in that market. Now that might be if you think about expansion, that may be a physical market, but also may be a different layer in the market or a different relationship with a partner where you're having success. I guess that's what, in my mind, because you can grow through integrations, you can grow through partnerships, you can grow direct to sell, you can grow, there's like different ways to go to market. Is going international the most efficient way to grow? Every one of those directions adds a multiplier of complexity. And if you can find one that people already love you in, I mean, it's a human thing, right? Like, we like to be loved, and so it just makes a lot more sense if you've found a place people are loving your product, service, or whatever it is. If you can use your telemetry to work that out, I think that's, that would be my first thing. Rather than like, I want to go to America and just like pounding away at one market is not the right, I don't think that's the right approach.
I just wanted to say 2 things that we are starting to explore that we didn't really mention today is also that you could find resellers of your software in the market who has already all the knowledge and the strategy to support you. So you don't necessarily need to start with a team, or you could have a mix. And I wanted to say something else that I forgot, so it's great.
Can jump into it. I mean, specifically for Japan. So I spent and lived and worked 3 years in Japan, but that was prior to venture capital. That was with Google. And so, the way of doing business in Japan is very, very much different. And we see a lot of companies enter with a partner or a strategic investor to sort of set foot in that market, because B2B relations are just like wildly different from what is seen in Europe.
And I know, I remember now, you can also buy like your competitor, buy over your competitor. I know, for example, in Germany, we have had so much trouble to strive in this market, and we tried so many different things that at some point I was like, shouldn't we just maybe buy a couple of companies who already have customers or are local, who have their network? Yeah, just an idea out there. I didn't experience it yet, but yeah.
Thanks a lot for the question, because I think that showed also another side. So Melina and all of them have a wealth of experience in expanding intentionally. So please come find them if they're available after the talk, because I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Thank you very much.